Hi, welcome to my studio. I'm Diane Williams. I want to give you a quick tour of some of the paintings that I've recently completed. This is a triptych that I did with some custom cutout stencils. I've layered it with Chinese rice paper, and I've painted over the rice paper in some cases, so you can see the original stencil below the rice paper and then the paint. And I've dusted it with a little gold powdered pigment. This up here is a handmade collage paper. It's also done on rice paper, and I used a textile block to make these prints. And I can show you about that in just a minute. The whole thing was done on canvas, which I put 3 layers of gesso and then a coat of modeling paste. I add that with a trowel to get a very smooth surface. I don't want to see any of the canvas underneath. In some areas I have layered it with an old book from 1915. It was called Injurious Insects. This is some calligraphy that I did in China when I was practicing calligraphy with a master. Years later, I found my practice papers and I've collaged them onto a lot of the paintings that I'm doing these days. So most of the work is multimedia, meaning I'm combining paint with collage. For these two, I took the same book on the injurious insects and I covered both of the panels entirely with the books. I've obscured the pages somewhat with paint. This one with a little bit more paint, I put the paint on with a scraper. And on this one, I used a brayer to get a very, very light veil of white. I went over this one with the handmade stencils, and again I have added some of the practice calligraphy I did in China. I have also painted into these with acrylic paint, and this is an old canvas that I cut up and I collaged on top. This was done with rust, which I make with vinegar and steel wool, and I activate it with hydrogen peroxide to get a great oxidation. I've done the same with this one, and I've even left the writing on it, which was on the back, identifying the name of the old painting, and the strings become a part of it as well. Again, I've used pencil markings on the top, and this also is rust. Another textile print here. Let me show you the textile prints. These are textile blocks, and what I do is I roll the paint with a brayer on top of the block, and I print it onto rice paper. And then I use that to collage onto the pieces. Depending on the type of rice paper, they could be transparent or semi-transparent. I've got some drawings over here. So I'm really getting quite a bit into drawing these days, and then cutting up the drawings to find excellent composition and also to collage onto paintings. This is a little study that I've just completed. So I suspect you're going to see a lot more drawings in my work, collaged. Over here are a couple of other mixed media pieces. Many people think there's an Asian feel to my work. It is because I studied in China. I like the use of the open space, and I think that's part of the reason. Obviously, some of the calligraphy is part of the reason, but even in pieces like this, where there's no calligraphy at all, it has a feel of open space, which you can see in a lot of Asian artwork that I love, especially the Chinese bird and flower paintings. I love to put the flowers into the work. Sometimes they're buried below the surface and you can't even determine that they're flowers. Other times they come right up to the top. This is another diptych that I did. I call this one Bull and the Wild Hare. And I had a great time with this one. I was a bit frustrated, so I put the canvas on the ground. I took a very large Chinese mop brush and I just got my body into it and made a beautiful sumi ink mark, which I then obscured with some paint and some collage. I also like to sand back into the surfaces to get some very interesting marks, especially if the painting, the paper gets a little wrinkled. If you sand those marks off, you can see what's underneath, giving you some beautiful lines and beautiful marks. I finish off the work with cold wax as a final layer, and that's hand rubbed. Okay, so thank you for visiting me in my studio. I'll see you later.